And we're live. All right, welcome to Social Business Hour. Instagram tools, the good, the bad, and the just please don't. On today's episode, I'm Brian Fanzo, known as iSocial Fans, joined by my co-host and the amazing community manager here at Social Business Hour. How are you today, Rachel Miller?
I am fantastic. Happy Monday, everybody. Thanks for tuning in.
All right, and we of course joined by the awesome Kristen Cardos, who's usually behind the scenes, but we brought her in on camera today, which you guys saw her in San Diego with us. So now this is like twice in a month after like no appearances in like 3 months. So I like this trend, Kristen. We're gonna keep this up.
All right. Hi, guys. Hi, everybody. Happy Monday.
All right, so we're talking Instagram tools. We're talking Instagram all month. We had the awesome Sue B. Zimmerman on last week. So if you guys didn't watch last week's show, what the hell were you doing? But other than that, it's out there for replay on the YouTubes as well. But we're talking Instagram tools, and I think Instagram's tools is interesting discussion, mainly because one of my favorite reasons that I love Instagram is because marketers can't ruin it yet. And usually when I think of tools, I think of tools usually enable marketers to be what I like to call lazy social media and do some things that are ruining it, but also at the same time, tools allow scale and allow growth. Simple things like right now for Instagram to log in with multiple accounts is still as a process, right? You have to log out, log back in, log out, log back in. You don't know what your notifications are. I mean, the user error for posting a Instagram picture to the wrong account, I'm sure, is extremely high because of things like that. So I think of tools as some tools are great, some tools are bad, and some you shouldn't just do. So hence the name of the topic here today. So, Rachel, I think you might actually want to start us off with some a personal Instagram story that I haven't heard yet. I wanted to I made her not tell me this beforehand so that I could get my honest opinion on air for you guys before we jump into question one. So, Rachel, on the spot, tell us a little, what is your Instagram beef?
So my beef with Instagram, you actually touched on a little bit, and it has a lot to do with having to log in and log out of multiple accounts, which I actually don't mind because I do that for a lot of people on native Twitter. However, this weekend when I was doing that, I logged out of one account, but I was still getting all of their alerts, and it was throwing me off my game because I went in to respond, and I actually did, as you mentioned, it's very easy to respond as the wrong account, but it was in my own, which made absolutely no sense. And I was wondering if other people are having that same issue. So even though you have logged all the way out and you've logged back into another account, you're still getting the alerts and your notifications on your Android or iPhone, because it was a major pain in my butt this weekend. It threw me off several times. So if anybody out there can feel my pain or has tips and tricks, I am all ears because it is a daily struggle.
And Rachel actually mentioned this to me earlier, and I said I have absolutely no idea how to make that not happen. It's happened to me too on a smaller scale.
So wait, so you're getting notifications, Instagram notifications for an account you're no longer logged into?
Yeah, and it was the first time this has happened. So I actually went so far as to uninstall, reinstall, because I thought maybe it would switch it. But no, as of right now, I am still getting notifications for an account that I haven't been logged into since Saturday.
Wow, that is interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah,
because it's a very active account.
Yeah, that's really interesting, especially because I don't think that's I know that's not a normal procedure or behavior for any tool. I mean, there's lots of tools. I mean, even Periscope, which we're broadcasting on now, I've logged in and out of a couple accounts with that, and I can't imagine. I mean, those notifications already suck on that thing. I couldn't imagine if that happened to me on there. So that's interesting. That'd definitely be a problem. So let's jump into first question one, and we'll see if you guys had that same problem and you have a fix for it. Maybe you guys can provide us that or more. But question one, is it possible to effectively manage a professional Instagram account without the assistance of tools? And Rachel Miller, you are a big proponent of automation in social, which I love because automation is awesome. Anyone who says automation sucks doesn't understand automation. Shitty people using automation suck. That's the problem. So when we're talking about these tools and Instagram, the fact that there are some tools out there, some good, some bad, some ugly. What are your thoughts there on that? Effectively managing a professional Instagram account with or without tools?
I'm going to stick my flag in the sand and say no. And it's not just because I'm a big fan of tools. I have been managing some Instagram accounts for businesses as well as my own recently, and tools have helped tremendously in our ability to scale and scale quickly and smartly. And I think smartly is the most important word in that sentence. Tools enable you to follow hashtags. There's a great social listening element available on Instagram. You can follow people using those specific hashtags really easily. And I'm not an advocate for spamming people or mass following, but being very strategic and finding your target audience with the aid of tools is much easier than, going through your phone and one by one following someone when you can. We're going to talk about more tools later, but there's one that I've been playing with recently called Oconosquare, and they have a circling ability much like Google+, which makes it really easy to follow people and comment and engage in a timely manner.
Which I love, and actually Rachel Polish from Subi Zimmerman's team, who, of course, we said Subi was our awesome guest last week. She said they're actually working with like 10 different vendors, 10 different tools to create like a guide and like a training or of some sort from the Instagram expert team on using Instagram tools, which doesn't surprise me because Subi and her team are on top of it when it comes to Instagram, which anybody who saw the show last week would definitely understand that. But I think you're right, Rachel. I think I'm impressed when I see even a company have multiple Instagram accounts. There are some great companies out there that run great Instagram accounts, but I'm going to give some love to the UFC, and I have a message out for Shauna to come out and be one of our guests at the end of the month, have a couple different guests from a couple different brands talking about how they use Instagram. But she told me one of the things when I was with her, they have like 8 or 9 Instagram accounts, or they have like 30 Twitter accounts, but she actually almost stopped using Instagram from her personal because she just wanted to stay logged in to her UFC account. And she has about 8 people on our team. There's a really cool social media picture of hers on her Facebook page this weekend from a big UFC fight. But one of the things I actually thought of there was, if you have multiple people managing the same Instagram account, even under like that logistics, that management is a little bit difficult there, which is also why I think I give more credit to Instagram accounts that are awesome, because they're a lot harder to be managed right now than some of the other platforms where, you can have, let's give credit to like Buffer. Buffer replied to 4 different tweets to me today. 4 different people in Buffer replied via Twitter, because they do caret sign. But on Instagram, thinking about that and how many different people can you have managing engagement from Instagram and then doing that without tools? I think the use of tools is needed. I think the update to Instagram that just came out, that allows you to have much better understanding of hashtags, much better understanding of what your users are and who's posting. I think that's key, but I also think, just like every other tool, you really have to manage the notifications on Instagram.
I agree, and as I admittedly am very new to Instagram for business, I have huge respect for people with large accounts who engage as often and as personally as they do, especially knowing that they have multiple accounts, because it's not easy. And a lot of it is just restrictions in Instagram itself as we know it today, and I'm sure it will continue to evolve and be much more friendly for community management. But right now, kudos to those of you out there, because you're doing an amazing job with a very restrictive platform.
Well, I think that's also why when, and Kristen, I'm curious, Kristen, from your standpoint, from even personal brand and community management, engaging off of Instagram from like an engagement perspective, Rachel Polish just put in there, we manage 6 accounts right now. It ain't easy. And if the Instagram expert team is saying it ain't easy, well, we know it's not easy for other brands. But I'm curious from like an engagement, I love the ability to be able to reply to everybody that's commenting. But even for my personal brand, and I don't get, my best post gets 80 to 100 likes total. I feel like if 16 people comment, that's a lot of work for me to comment to all 16 of them. Within the comments there, what are your thoughts, Kristen, from an engagement perspective, but especially from a community manager? What do you think about that from an Instagram side of the house?
I think it's just a lot more old-fashioned elbow grease and time when it comes to that, because the notifications aren't as flexible or responsive as they are other places. I think it's just a little bit more of a being vigilant and going in and taking the time to do it. Yes, there are tools, and we're talking about how we're learning those tools and their advantages, but I think there's a little bit of more of a hands-on measure when it comes to that. But I also was thinking earlier when you guys were talking that in some ways this thing with Instagram, and especially because they keep updating Instagram and implementing new features, it's almost like how Twitter was a few years ago for some of us. The learning curve aspect. So it all seems really foreign and really clunky and sort of strange in a way right now, but I have a feeling that in a year or maybe two, it won't be so much. Maybe they will have made some changes, but maybe we will have just gotten more used to the platform.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think people are kind of developing their own hacks. I know recently I've been engaging with some larger accounts, and they've used the direct message option to respond back to me from a public comment, which is a fantastic trick for, you know, making sure people know that you saw their comment, and also allows you to then segment the conversation so you can keep it going versus replying in the stream. So I think I've seen a lot of people getting creative to kind of work with what's currently available, and that's just in the tool itself, let alone or the platform versus a tool to help with that.
Yeah, and Rachel just brought up a good point on Inside Periscope. She said, you know, once the ad campaign, the ad section actually gets rolled out, more than likely there'll be more of an emphasis on tools. And I couldn't agree more. I think, you know, let's put it in perspective, not until there was ads on Pinterest did Buffer have Pinterest as an option, right? And I think that's probably the same on Instagram. And I can't wait. I love the idea of good ads, quality ads being placed in Instagram, and people that are able to manage it. Because like you said, Rachel, the people that are able to do it like via DM, Twitter or Instagram DM, like I can say I've probably got more Instagram DMs in the last month than I probably have in the last 2 years that I've been on the tool. So I think that's also an interesting one from a standpoint of, you know, as more brands get kind of understanding there, what are we actually going to see when it comes to these brands truly using this tool once there's ads, once they're putting some dollars behind it, not just some free social.
Yeah, I'm going to go out and suggest that there needs to be more color coding with comments. I think when the brand responds, it should have it like a highlight in the text that pops out more than just in the stream. That would be
I love that idea.
If anyone's listening, write that down.
I like that idea. Instagram, dear Facebook Instagram team, let's make it to where it's known. I like it. I said the same thing on Periscope. I want Periscope. I want to be able to tag some, like give people like my 10 most popular commenters, so that when they comment, it's highlighted more than it is for just a random, you know, everyday commenter. I think that kind of thing would be nice for brands. All right, so on question 2, what will increase your engagement faster? Best practices for hashtag use or more followers? I like this question. This question could go very interesting ways. So what are your thoughts initially, Rach?
So I think of all my strategies for Instagram, I've thought about this one the most because businesses want more followers, because it's kind of like, you know, when we all got on Twitter and Google Plus, we're like, you must need followers to be cool, right? So people see your stuff, but no. Turns out in my use so far that the hashtag is still the glue that holds conversations together and gets you on people's radars, which in turn increases your followers. So my suggestion, if you want to increase engagement, know which hashtags to use and use them often. But I am curious to hear what the community says and what you guys think.
Kristen, you want to jump in on that one?
I got nothing, Brian.
Got nothing.
My answer, no, honestly, my conclusion is the same as Rachel's. But I have declared myself, I mean, I may be a community manager, but I have declared myself in study/intern mode with Instagram. So I'm soaking in all this information like a sponge and starting to do some trial and error.
Well, you know, for me, one of the things on it is very interesting from a standpoint of I was growing my personal Instagram account fairly substantially, but I was using it. I would say I was using a Twitter hashtag philosophy. So I would average no more than three hashtags. I would use hashtags that were relevant. My goal usually was one massive hashtag that was like industry specific, one specific unique hashtag to me, because whoa, I just knocked my Instagram. Look at that. I think the Instagram gods did not like my my Instagram hashtag. Whoa!
Oh no!
My hashtag sign.
Don't tell Subi.
Yeah. And then the third one, I always found one that was more specific. But what I've learned, and I've learned it from watching Sue Zimmerman and watching Jen Trans and watching some of the great brands, is increasing your amount of hashtags is important, but also finding ones that aren't the large ones. Because I mean, let's say that like if you use social media as a hashtag, I think it was like 17 million people use that hashtag. I mean, that's like putting social media hashtag in your Twitter Hootsuite or in your TweetDeck. It goes so fast you can't even read the information there. So what if you did social media marketing or social media for small businesses, and it was brought down to 4,000 people using that? I think those kind of hashtag understanding that sometimes it's important to be part of the big conversation, but it's important to segment those hashtags. And I started using, I'm probably upwards to 10 to 12 hashtags. I can tell you the way I'm using them now is I post something, because I posted to Facebook and to Twitter. So I actually write my Instagram post, I post it to Facebook and Twitter, and then I go in and edit, and then I add my hashtags in because I don't want it in my Facebook and I don't want it whenever it's getting posted to the other networks. And I try to add 10 to 12 hashtags. I do a little bit of research on the hashtag itself to see if there's any chance in hell of me being kind of segmented out of there. If there's a celebrity that uses it 4 times a day, I know that's not one I need to use because that's not my target automation. But for me, use Cleep, category, location, emotions, events, products. I like that, Cleep, CLEEP. Rachel, make sure you tweet that out with the hashtag SBizHour because I think that's a great tip. So, and I also love location-based. Location-based is awesome. There's a blog post on millennialceo.com right now from the awesome Andrew Hutchinson who says personalization is the future, and we all agree on that. And if you can personalize your posts with location-based, event-based, especially like extreme, putting San Diego is great, but putting like San Diego Harbor or putting San Diego and then putting the event you're at, that really kind of does narrow it down and provide you some extreme value when you're using hashtags on Instagram.
Yeah, the location, hashtags, and the geotagging, sorry to cut you off, Kristen, has been huge for me on Instagram. I actually use it more often than Yelp right now. If I'm researching a restaurant or a store, or even where I'm going, if I'm going on a road trip, I'll type in what I think the hashtag might be, and I'll scroll through and see what people are talking about. So I imagine if you are a location-based service, very powerful.
All I was going to say was that 2 really hot things that you hit on, Brian, that I think are hot based on what Sue B says are the location one, obviously, and then her, to quote her, she says the riches are in the niches. So being tactical with those less populated hashtags. But it does require research. You have to put some work in. It's not something you can just guess at. You have to do the research.
Yeah, it's funny because like I did one today. I posted on Instagram behind the scenes of me doing my email newsletter video yesterday because my wife took a picture from inside the house, and I was like, oh, that's funny because it's me like talking at a camera that's on like a fence pole on the outside of the house, and I put like behind the scenes as a hashtag. But when it came up, I was like, wait, that's not like everybody else that's putting behind the scenes. There was some stuff on there that I'm like, I don't want to be associated with that. So it made me like freeze and then go back and be like, okay, well now I better let's kill this Instagram post and let me start over. The problem was there is no save to draft. There is no switching accounts. Like for me, there is some of those things that's like, oh my gosh, I have to now like delete this and start over. Like filter doesn't save. Like that does those kind of things. And there's lots of people who are asking on Periscope as well about the switching accounts. It is on your app on your phone. It is log in, log out. I use multiple browsers. So I use Safari, Firefox, and Chrome, and then I can log into 3 different Instagram accounts on my computer. But on your phone, the only other thing that I've done, I don't know if anyone else is doing this, is I use Chrome on my phone and log into 1 Instagram account on my phone using the browser, and then 1 using the app. So there I have 2 that I can technically engage out of on my device. But ultimately, we're still running into this idea where if you want to run multiple accounts or do like a massive amount of posting, there's no drafts and there's no easy switching between accounts like what Twitter has today.
Yeah, I'm hoping they come out with some sort of paid service or something. I would definitely pay to be able to have multiple logins attached to one account. But just to kind of go back to the hashtag, so I'm a big advocate for a custom hashtag, and I don't mean like, you make up a different one each time you use it, but for your product or your service or however you want to categorize your posts, if you come up with a hashtag, and like Kristen said, it's hard work, you got to be diligent and keep using it, but people will start to follow you, you'll be known for that specific hashtag.
So no, I agree completely, and it's just like YouTube. YouTube's the same way, right? You want to, our friend Australia Wow Nathan, I use a hashtag that I know is mine every time. Therefore, when it looks for recent or most like videos, it always pulls that one hashtag that's the most commonly one used. So I think that's a really good one. The fact that emoticons are searchable on Instagram is one that I think. If you're someone that is an early adopter and something like that, I think emoticons is pretty awesome from a search perspective. Another thing for me, I think this is interesting, is that I don't like the idea. So someone posted on Periscope and asked why I don't just post it and then edit the hashtag afterwards. I will tell you the new autocomplete feature. If you haven't gone to Instagram lately, when you're putting in a hashtag, the autocomplete is awesome because it tells you how many times it's been used and it gives you a drop down. The problem is the autocomplete does not exist when you're editing an existing post. So if you're editing an existing post and putting a hashtag in, it doesn't give you what the other hashtags are associated, what the number of posts are, what other ones they're using. So if you want to use that feature, it has to be in your initial native post, because editing it afterwards, you don't get that benefit of that auto-population, which in my opinion is a tool that Twitter should have had a long time ago, and kudos to Instagram, because I can tell you I've been going to Instagram and searching hashtags more, like you said for Yelp, I'm doing that more than I am on Twitter for hashtags, which I would have never guessed that would be the use case.
So yeah, I have a question about that. So I see a lot of people will post their picture and just put in like a cool comment, but then they'll add a comment beneath it with like 30 hashtags. So I'd be curious to know from Subi's team or anybody out there who's been using Instagram for business for a while how that gets crawled, and if you still get picked up in the same searches as you would if you attached it directly to the image.
So Rachel said, Rachel on Subi's team said you need to add hashtags immediately to get the most reach from your post.
There you go. Write that down.
Yep, that makes sense.
Yeah, but okay, not to split hairs, but by immediately, do we mean in your first draft, and can they be below?
So she said, and she has a good point. She said hashtags in your initial comment look desperate. It's kind of like when someone posts on Facebook and they're the first person to like their own Facebook post. Like, I'm always like, wow, you like what you just posted 30 seconds ago. Like, kudos. So, no, I agree with that, but I also think of it this way. If you're adding hashtags in the comments, a day after your post, I'm not against that, but I do think like that initial post, like, especially if it's like 2 minutes after you did the original post, like, wow, like you didn't have those hashtags out there. But I think that's probably something that I don't blame people for doing that, because going back and editing the post is a whole other process. And for me, I'm someone that's fat fingers and spell check. I need spell check to be on my side, and when I don't have that auto populate and don't have those features with me, it does kind of help me or prevent me from adding some hashtags. So I guess maybe this is the question: Would you rather not use the hashtags that you forgot to use, or add them as the first comment in your post to Instagram? I think that's what you probably have to decide. I don't know the answer to that, but I'd be curious to hear what everybody else has to say about that. So we want to jump into question 3?
I mean, aesthetically, it just doesn't look that great when you're using 30 different hashtags. And I understand why people do it, but I just feel like maybe it's a scatter approach versus, really being targeted and trying to own a certain segment. I mean, who needs 30 hashtags, really?
I had a conversation with a friend earlier today, Mally Hart at Go Tweets Go. We were talking about this very subject, and I was saying that for me, I'm used to thinking of lots of hashtags as spammy. So even though all the smart people on Instagram say you should use more, it's inherent for me to feel like it's too much. So I think I don't think that they're wrong. I think we're just programmed to see it a certain way, and we might have to be a little more open-minded at trying more. Maybe not the maximum of 30, but maybe just more.
I'll admit it took me a year and a half to get to use more than 3, because I'm Twitterly trained. I talk in 140 characters, so no kidding that I freaking use hashtags in a 140 character philosophy. And really, it's kind of like that idea where people use hashtags on LinkedIn, and I want to reach through the LinkedIn profile and grab them by their throat and be like, hashtags are not searchable on LinkedIn. But at the same time, when I only use 3 on Instagram, I'm kind of missing out, right? So, for me, and Rachel just put in there, Rachel Polish from Subi team. Rachel, thank you for being awesome and adding some amazing value through Periscope. She said that they average 8 to 12 on regular is what they are doing. Now I did see like one of my favorite new Instagram accounts is Inside SF. We saw those guys. We saw him at Social Media Day in San Diego, and they're up at 20 hashtags almost consistently every single time. But Kristen, to your point, once I got over the fact of that feeling spammy, I then realized those that are great at it are really creative at which hashtags they're using, and I almost increased my respect of the hashtag, the over hashtag use by those. Now, if it's someone that puts in follow for follow me back, follow friends, team follow, and they use all of those, I usually hit the unfollow button because I'm like, this is just ridiculous. You are just wasting every. But if it's someone that's doing travel San Francisco tourism, using ones that are all unique niches that, like you said, Sue's comment, I think that is a creative way and probably takes more talent than we realize to really use amazing Instagram hashtags across the platform.
I agree. So we all agree that the hashtag is important. More is best, but still moderation is key. But let's kind of take a step back. So Instagram, after all, is a picture-based platform. And raise your hand if you see a lot of shitty images every day.
Yeah.
I know I do. So question 3 is image quality is everything on Instagram. What tools do you use for editing and resizing and making them appropriate for Instagram?
I talk a lot about, tools can't fix stupid. Filters can't fix really crappy pictures. And I think that's something that we kind of have to remember when it comes to that. I also think in the age of our cameras these days, and this sounds really bad, and Mom, if you're listening, I'm sorry, but so my mom's using like an iPhone 4S, and so she was going to post something to Instagram, and I saw the picture, and I'm like, oh my gosh, the quality was horrible, the dots, because she had to zoom in a little bit. So for me, I think it's almost like one of those things where, I have a whole lot of respect. I'm going to give a shout out to Amy of Savvy Sexy Social. She's using her DSLR camera and then uploading them onto her device and then uploading them into Instagram using true quality, a professional camera to get really quality pictures. But even the front of your camera sometimes, if you're using the front of your iPhone 6 even, and then you zoom in, you're going to lose so much quality there. I think it is something that you really do have to understand quality. Now, I'm also a fan of saying hey, this is behind the scenes, or this is me trying to make something look, kind of caveating. Don't try to pass something off as this amazing picture when you've zoomed in and all we see is granular stuff across the board.
Yeah, actually, so I've taken some tips from some of my photographer friends as well, with using an actual camera and then uploading it, great quality, and also not relying on Instagram filters. So I know Kristen and I, one of our favorite tools is the Photoshop Express app, which is free and it's badass. So I rely on that a lot just to do some quick color corrections versus, making everything sepia toned or look like it came from 1970. Actually, just a small little tweak of brightness or adding a bit of blue does wonders. Then when you upload it, it looks badass versus overly filtered and kind of cheesy. So look for other tools. You don't need to rely on just Instagram itself for editing and resizing.
Yeah, I can't say enough about the Photoshop Express app, which is free. That one I use a lot of times when the lighting is just atrocious because I'm not a photographer, and I can actually get some pretty good results with the lighting and that kind of stuff. I like it. I like that tool better than any of the built-in filters on it.
Interesting.
I agree.
That's just interesting, because then we're adding steps to a tool that, one of the things that really bothers me is I hate taking pictures in Square. Right, if we're taking pictures of a group, or I'm taking pictures, even a selfie group picture, I don't like using Square. I just don't like it. I like having the full picture and then cropping it afterwards. But it does affect the quality of the picture. And if you take it in Square initially, the quality of the picture is actually much better, right? So, I was laughing at Social Media Day. There was multiple people that were like, well, hold on, let me switch it to Square because I know I'm going to post it to Instagram. And to me, that strategy of knowing where you're going to go with that picture is a step forward that a lot of brands, a lot of people aren't thinking. And I think, one of the jokes was I was like, ooh, this picture's great, but it would never fit in a square. I'm uploading it natively to Facebook, right? Like you're like, oh, Instagram crowd misses that, right? Like so I think that's also something from a quality perspective that we kind of have to look at and say sometimes, the picture might be great, but maybe it's Snapchat worthy, not Instagram worthy.
No, I think that's actually a great tip. Like you take it either for the platform or think of whatever tool would be best. And I know I used to use Instagram itself for taking a lot of pictures, and now I don't. I use the square option on my phone. Thank you, iPhone, for putting that in your camera, because it does save you from having to crop it and perhaps crop it badly, but also the quality is better because you can zoom in and do a lot of things that Instagram doesn't allow you to do. So it's a picture platform. Put on your little photographer's hat and really think it through before taking a snap.
Well, and Brandon on Twitter says he's a bit embarrassed, but actually I actually go the other way. I don't think it's embarrassing. I think it's kudos to you. He uses Photoshop, Dropboxes it onto his device, and then uploads it to Instagram. They don't do any on the spot Instagram uploads. Kudos, Brandon. I think that's actually, I give you more respect than being embarrassing because I think real time is important. The right time is even more important, and quality on Instagram is the most important side of it. So I think I give you kudos for that. I think more brands should take that approach.
No, actually, and high five to that, because I will use Canva or WordSwag for a quick mock-up, but I use Photoshop and Illustrator. I'm a big Adobe fan, and I do that a lot, especially for promos for shows, because you can design it in high resolution on your laptop, drop it in Box or Drive or whatever your tool is, and then upload it from your phone. That is nothing to be embarrassed about. That's actually a smart hack. So kudos to you.
I just want to throw out really quickly that community is putting forth some excellent tool suggestions and quite a few that I've never heard of that I want to check out. So after our chat today, I'll make sure to compile a list of all these goodies from you guys.
Yeah. Yeah, I know PicStitch, and it's so funny. I got to delete like 8 apps off my phone when the Layout app came out by Instagram, because I think I had every PicStitch layout collage, whatever random words they could put into the App Store that said something about a collage. I think I downloaded every one of those apps because I like that idea of adding, because and maybe that's something we hadn't talked about when it comes to quality. If you're using one of those collage ones, you can have a more granular pic that might look better zoomed out in one of those, and then zoom in the smaller square, and actually sometimes it'll actually look a little bit higher quality in there. But great point, Kristen. I'm looking at the Twitters on my iPad, and you're right. Visco, I've used Visco. Afterlight, I've used Afterlight. Afterlight is on mine. But yeah, layout for Instagram is like one of my favorite. Actually, it probably is my favorite new tool that's even associated with Instagram, because I use that I use that on regular.
Yeah, actually, some of these I haven't heard of, so that's awesome. I love finding new tools, especially for editing photos. So.
And Shelly Kramer just put in there and said she's looking for PS Express now. That you just gave the recommendation there, Rachel.
Yeah,
so.
That one, hands down, is the best that I have found. Also, as a big Photoshop fan, it's almost as good as the real thing.
And you know what? And we're talking tools here, and Brandon just said a point, and I wanted to give a shout out. Understanding your workflow and understanding how you manage these tools, just because you have to log into multiple accounts doesn't mean it has to be difficult. Brandon said it without even probably realizing it, but the fact that he's putting it in, using it on the computer, putting it in the Dropbox, and then it can be pulled from the cloud onto your device. That's a workflow that's pretty easy. It's not sending yourself an email and then passing the email off to somebody else, or having to go plug your phone into the. So for me, if you're able to, even use something like, we talk about Slack a lot, but like Slack allows you to natively upload a picture into Slack and then natively download it on your device. So if you had someone that if your editor is editing it and then puts it into your one device that can be accessed on any device, that is essential. Stop making it so hard on yourself. Start managing your workflow to add these kind of things in there. So I think it's kudos to anybody that's using a Dropbox, a Box, a Google Drive,
Slack.
A Slack. Yeah. I will say that I hate that Google Docs does not allow me to download pictures that are put inside of a doc. That is a major problem in my book for that. But that's why Slack and the Dropbox and Google Drive is there as well. I used Google Drive today. Actually, that's a good example. I had a Google Drive sew on a picture for a promo graphic that we're going to do on Wednesday. I put it up on Google Drive, sent it over to him so he could just get it from his phone, put it onto Instagram without me ever having to have access to their Instagram account for an Applebee's project that we're working on. So I think those kind of things. Kudos for a quality workflow there, Brandon. I want to give you that kudos as well.
And it looks like Sue B just tweeted, if you're looking for inspiration for Instagram for business or just in general, if you look at hashtags layout and layout app, there's apparently some awesome ideas in what people are doing. So check it out.
David Pepper said, if the photo is grainy, I did it on purpose. Artistic.
Hashtag artistic.
Filtered. That's a kudos for dudes who are looking at girls online. If it's grainy, it's overly filtered.
I like. Who was it? Was it?
Be skeptical.
I think BuzzFeed did the parody where they were able to look at every Instagram picture that had the hashtag not filtered and see how many of them were actually filtered. And there was something like 85% of those with the hashtag no filter had actually been altered since they were taken. I was like, that's awesome.
Oh yeah.
Okay, for the record,
into the same bucket as the no makeup hashtag. Girls, I'm onto you because nobody's eyelashes curl that much naturally.
No, honey, no. And for the record, just for my integrity, my reputation, if you happen to look at my Instagram and you see old pictures from Okinawa, I didn't even use the no filter hashtag, but they're not filtered. I want to be super upfront about that. It really looks like that.
Love it. All right, so let's jump into the next question.
Okay, so question 4. As admittedly, I'm a newbie to Instagram for business, but I'm a huge advocate for social listening. So I've been having a lot of fun following hashtags and finding new people, but I'm curious to know what are some engagement do's and don'ts. So once you've identified someone, how do you get on their radar? Because it's not necessarily as easy as it might be on Twitter or Facebook or any of the other social media platforms. So what are your tips for engaging on Instagram, B?
I love it. And Gus Wanger just asked a question about text-only posts. We actually have that question coming up next, so we'll answer that question up very next. So just stay tuned on that. So for me, the engagement on and this is funny. So I went and hung out with some fraternity brothers this weekend, and they were like, Brian, they were talking about something like, well, of course I posted on Instagram, and they assume because I work in social media, I see every single post that exists everywhere in the world, which I don't blame them for assuming. But one of the things that I started to realize was because you can't categorize and you can't really organize a lot of your pictures, I actually have notifications turned on for certain people so that it notifies me when they post. And Sue B. Zimmerman is one of them. So every time Sue posts, it actually pops up and says, Brian, Sue B. posted a picture. Not that she tagged me in one, but that she posted one. And that might seem like a lot for people, but for me to study a platform, why would I not want to see how the expert does it? When she's and this is how geeky I get. I track when she's posting, what hashtag she's posting. I'm sorry, Rachel, if you're gonna feel like now Rachel from Sue B's team, I'm stalking you guys, but I love studying what works. But I turn on those notifications for individual accounts. And I think that's important. I also think it's important, and Sue mentioned this last time, and I never thought of it this way, but she said it's important to go back to older pictures and always make sure that you're the last comment, so that people know that you were the one that engaged. I love that. I think that I even went back to posts that are a couple weeks old and like answered a question that was like the last comment, and even put it with an engagement question like, has this changed since I last commented? Because I think it's important. I use that hashtag show you care a lot. I mean, you do have to show you care. If you ask a question, or I mean, what's your whole point of posting to Instagram? If you post a picture or even one that has text on it and it's engaging, like what are you inspired by today? And there's 30 people that write what they're inspired by, and the brand never engages. That is ridiculous. There is no excuse for that. That is social stupid.
No, but I have a question there. So people aren't notified unless you use their handle in a comment, right? So if you just reply, no one's notified. Is that accurate?
No, you are notified for that.
No, as the original poster, you're notified. But what if I just reply to a comment that forgets
they're not
their handle or?
No, it's not like Facebook where it doesn't do the inline notifications of, hey, this person commented on a post that you commented on. So no, it doesn't.
So going back to making sure you're the last person to comment on old pictures, no one's being notified that you're then re-engaging. It's just if new people stumble across that image, they'll see that you're actively engaging. Is that the trick there?
That's the piece there. Okay. And I think it's kind of important when you look at a brand and be like, hey, that brand was the last one that kind of engaged at the end.
Okay, that makes sense. We're learning. I'm scribbling all kinds of stuff down.
No, this is good, and so let's jump into the next question real quick. Yeah, but people are saying the notifications when others post. I can tell you that for social intelligence, and here's another thing. I hate over notifications on my iPhone, but I don't mind them on my iPad. So you know what I do? I download the iPhone version to my iPad of Instagram, and I turn on every notification on that device. And so then I can scroll through those notifications on my iPad and kind of pick and choose. I usually end up engaging off of my iPhone. But then I'm not ruining my iPhone notifications, but I'm also still getting a lot of these notifications so that I don't forget some of these people or kind of leave out of it. So, question 5, what should or we shouldn't we post on Instagram? And my caveat here is it okay to post 10 quote graphics in one day? And what I mean by that is I had actually someone, I'm going to leave his name out there, he was a big social media guy, and he said he's going to start unfollowing every person that posts quote graphics on Instagram, not pictures of themselves or pictures of art or pictures. And I was furious of that idea. I love creative quotes. I love quotes for engagement. But I also hate people that spam the hell out of it or only use quotes of themselves or quote the exact same quote in 50 different pictures. So that's my little bit of a rant there. It sounds a little rantish, but I'm curious, what are your guys' thoughts?
Okay, so I'm a huge Simon Sinek fan, and if anyone follows him, he actually has a couple different Instagram accounts, but one is only quotes. And I love them, I heart everyone, and I often repost them. So, and I'll tag people in it that I think might be inspired by them. I think I've caught each of you a couple times. So I think it really depends on who they are, what the quote's about, and your relationship to them. If it's someone that you are learning from daily, or they inspire you, or they just make you laugh, it's fine. If you don't like what someone's posting, unfollow them. No one's forcing you to follow that account. So best practices, I think it has a lot to do with the recipient. If you don't like it, no one's making you follow that account because maybe somebody else is finding value in it.
For me, it's about volume and context overall, whether it's a quote or just a picture of your lunch. I don't care. I don't want to see 25 of anything from you in a row in my feed. Well, maybe you guys, but nobody else. You know what I'm saying? So I like quotes, and I like, especially if they're not, please go download my ebook. If they're inspirational quotes or they're cute or they're funny or whatever, I'm good with it as long as it's not overwhelming and it's not every 3 seconds you're posting another one. That's just my personal preference.
And for me, I think it's good. It's probably important to look at your own profile on a browser. And maybe that's a tip from me, because I go and look at my own profile and see what those first 16 squares are that come up on a browser. And if it's all the exact same theme stuff, I'm like, ooh, I might need to change it up on my next post. But here's another thing. I don't care if it's your personal brand. I don't care if it's your real brand. I don't care what you have to be telling a story and have a strategy for every single post. If it's just to let my friends and family back on the East Coast see pictures of my kids, that's still a strategy. And I think when you forget that and you just I had someone tell me, well, I posted 13 pictures from an event I was at. I said, why? And they said, well, why do I need to have a strategy for posting pictures from an event? And I was like, why would you not have a strategy for that? If you're just posting, you're going to have people that are unfollowing you because it makes no sense. So I think that's another thing that is, let's look at it from a strategic perspective and say, why am I posting this? What am I hoping to get out of it? Because another question, and this is one that came up, and I'll be curious. I think you guys probably. I have a great question that I wanted to kind of ask you guys. But did you want to have anything else to add to that one before I ask this question? No. All right. So this question I thought is really interesting. So the like button on Facebook is something we talk a lot about. And if anybody follows Tim McDonald, he's one of my favorite people in the world. I've talked about there's a few people I get on an airplane for tonight and fly to help them out, and Tim McDonald's one of them. He despises people just hitting the like button and not commenting, to the point where he will not engage he will not engage or ever like a post on Facebook. He will only comment on them. Now, I think that's extreme, but on Instagram, it's even easier to like because it's double tapping the picture. So I can scroll through a feed, double tap, double tap, double tap. So I'm curious because someone posted on here, and let me give, Jamie Stein said, don't just like a pic, comment on it. Social media needs to be social. What is your guys' thoughts on double tapping for the heart versus actually commenting in the page? And I'll give my thought on that afterwards.
Well, I think, again, it goes back to your sentiment. I like a lot of stuff on Facebook and Instagram and favorite stuff on Twitter because it's kind of like a fist bump or a high five. And vanity metrics matter on Facebook. The more you like something, it gets, feeds the algorithm, so it gets shown more. There are a lot of reasons for it. I know on Instagram it shows up in popular based on, the number of hearts. If I'm compelled to comment, I'll comment, but I don't think you can write. Otherwise, just like Subi earlier, which I love, she said, don't just write nice pic. And that's kind of okay. So if it's not cool to just like something, what's worse, just writing nice pic? Because that seems really flippant. And I would actually get more annoyed by that than someone just liking it and not commenting at all. So.
Well, actually, I even hate even more when and this is something that I do and then I unfollow them, is when I realize they've commented the same thing on like 3 of my posts. I go and look at other comments they make on other people's posts, and if they copy and paste the exact same freaking comment and a comment to other people's posts as well, I unfollow them. Because that is the worst lazy social that exists. That's an auto reply to every tweet that has a hashtag. There is no excuse to that in my opinion. But I also do I like the ones that say like people that'll make a comment and add an emoji to it, or like, oh, I never thought of this, thumbs up, or I think that's better than nice pic, or ones that say thanks Brian, you inspired me today, or a brand for Converse, I put a lot of times on there, I say I hate that you didn't show any shoes, but yet I'm buying your shoes now. Right? That's what I do on the Converse one. Or Dunkin' Donuts, I say, drove by 3 Starbucks today because of your damn Instagram account. So, that's actually a really great point on understanding the difference between a like, a comment, and a shitty comment.
Yeah. I would rather have a heartfelt, personalized comment than something like, even a thumbs up to a certain extent. Like, it's nice that they took the time, but again, if they're doing it, like you said, to 15 other people in the space of minutes, then are they really caring? Is that more impactful than them just liking it?
My logic is a lot like Rachel's. A fist bump, that's a heart. Like if you post something that says Happy Monday, fist bump. I don't really have anything. I hope your Monday's great too. Right. So it really all depends on what it is. And I confess that I don't intend to be stingy with comments, but I don't always have a formulated answer. I might just think, hey, that was cool, so I'll heart. If I think it's super hilarious, or oh my gosh, your kids are so cute, or whatever, then I'll comment.
I sometimes don't comment because my comment will be an engagement comment, and then I know it's going to take more engagement from me, right? It's gonna take an extra proactive, and that sounds really bad, but I'm like, oh crap. And that means if I comment with this statement, that means they're going to answer that question, and then I'm going to have to engage again. And that's not being social, but I'm also being conscious enough to know that if I'm going to take the time to engage and they're going to engage back with me, I better reply there, right? Like there's like a system there. And Sue just put in there, if there's a positive thought that went through your head when scrolling through Instagram, leave it as a comment. That's a great philosophy, because you're like, ooh, that's pretty. Well, why don't you put that as a comment? Or, damn, I never thought of that. And back to the quotes thing, I'm going to go on record and say I love quote graphics. I absolutely love quote graphics in Instagram. I like them even more that you can't share them in a very cool way to Twitter, because then it isn't stuff I see on Twitter all the time, right? Because even let's say Simon Sinek's ones, I always find myself, I like something off Simon Sinek's on Instagram, I have to go find it on Facebook to share it on Facebook, because if I just hit that share button, it doesn't put it in line, it just sends a link out to Twitter, it doesn't even @ his Twitter account, which drives me bonkers. But I like the idea that the quote graphic kind of lives, and the engagement on that quote graphic is housed inside there, and if I really love it, I repost it, which I think is the ultimate. We talked about the fist bump. That's the ultimate, hey, I want to screen this quote from all my friends from the rooftops. I think more people should requote other things that inspire them to give people the true love that Instagram does have.
All right, you stole my thunder. I was going to ask how we felt about the Regram or Repost apps. I'm a huge fan. I use them not often, but yeah, for me that is like the ultimate love. Like, I like this so much, I couldn't even come up with anything better, so I'm just going to give you a shout out.
So, I love it too. Awesome. And another point from Sue, do I sound like I've been listening to Sue a lot, you guys? To make sure that you credit the person. So when you do your repost or your regram, whatever app you're using, just make sure you have, your RG or R repost at so-and-so. And that way people can go back to the origin of whatever it was. And I love that too. I draw a lot of parallels to Twitter. That's a retweet. That's I'm passing this on.
You know what? People ask all the time about how I'm growing my followers on Twitter, and I often say, like I shared other people's great shit and I tagged them in it, and I added my own little insight to it, but then I shared it and tagged them in it. You sharing someone else's posts, and I go a little bit of a rant here because I had a podcast episode of mine apparently connect on some RSS feed yesterday, and I have a lot of social listening tools set up for me, and so if my name is used in a URL or used on Twitter without it tagging me as iSocialFans, if it's used a certain quota, I get an email about it. Well, 480 times on Twitter yesterday, my name was mentioned. Not once was my Twitter account tagged. 480. So why those people are sharing all this great podcast of me as a guest in there? They're not tagging the podcast or podcaster or the guest of the podcast. To me, they were missing a huge element because guess what? They didn't get any retweets from me, right? And and not saying that that's a huge deal, but I think when we're looking at Instagram, why the hell would you not give credit, tag the right people in it? I think that's a mistake that people look at that and say, ooh, if I repost this and don't tag the person in it, nobody will realize that I didn't take this picture. Well, yes, we will. Your picture from Santa Monica this week, and now you have a picture from Fiji tomorrow. We realized you're not in Fiji. Give the person who took the Fiji picture credit, and let's get over it. I think this idea of stealing people's work and making it our own, especially on the platforms like Instagram, is such a joke. And people that are doing that, get over it. We need to move past that.
Yeah. I do like that the Regram apps include the original person's handle at the bottom, but yeah, I definitely suggest giving a call to action, follow this person for all more awesome quotes or whatever it happens to be. I think that's also why, going back to Twitter, I love the new quote feature because it's kind of the same premise. It puts their tweet in its entirety. Sometimes when you retweet, you can't add anything without screwing it up, but I think the quote is much like the Regram, but it gives respect to the original poster, but it allows you to add your own comments.
Well, so Jeremy on Periscope just said that he watermarks his pictures so that when someone does repost it or reshare it and doesn't. That's an interesting philosophy. Now I use for Canva. I'm an addict. Canva is my homepage. I have a Canva shirt. Canva, I absolutely love Canva for social graphics. I love it for quote graphics. I love their iPad app. Canva's iPad app is amazing. I love WordSwag app. But I will put my Twitter handle somewhere close enough to a quote that someone can't cut it out, because I've had that many, many a times where I went and worked hard at creating a pretty cool graphic and someone just screenshotted whatever they could and cut out my own Twitter name. So putting a screenshot a watermark is an interesting philosophy, but to me that's also a little bit extra work. I'm not sure if it's that big of a deal for me if someone's resharing it without knowing it. But another one that I actually love that Sue talked about, and I just want to bring it back up because she did it to me again last week, and I thought it was great, is if she reshared one of my pictures but didn't tag all the same people in it, and she said simply in her comment, if you want to see who all these cool people are in that picture, go to iSocialFans Instagram account to see who are all tagged. And I thought that was great because, yes, it's going to her feed, and yes, it's going, but she's almost making that connection to grow my followers so easy that what I did is I'm going to do the exact same thing for Sue, and Sue has one that's massive because I think it's that quid pro quo, and I would love to bridge communities that way. So I think people need to take that advantage more, and when they're doing that, kind of bridge people between the two. But yeah, Canva and WordSwag, people were asking about those. Those are two of my favorite. WordSwag for iOS devices, Canva for your iPad and your web browser are all, almost free tools that do awesome graphics.
So speaking of bridging communities, I know a lot of us are starting to use Instagram for business. What is the best way to encourage your Twitter followers or your Facebook friends and family to find you on Instagram as well? So how are you encouraging people without kind of coming across as pushy?
So I have this advice. If you think getting people to find you and follow you on Instagram is hard, start trying to grow your Snapchat following. That is like a painful pulling teeth process. Instagram is 1,000 times easier to grow because you have a homepage, you have places you can drive people traffic.
Hashtags.
Yeah, hashtags. You can embed it in into your profiles. I use If This Then That app to repost the picture natively into my Twitter account, which sometimes does cut off the quote or cut it off in like a weird way, which I'm willing to do that just so the picture will sit in my Twitter media. But one of the things I think for me is, when you're I love the embed feature of Instagram. So if you're going to put a picture of something from Instagram inside of a blog post, use the embed, copy that word, the HTML, and when someone wants to click on it, they click on the picture, it opens your Instagram page. And I think that is awesome. And too often I see someone goes and uploads it into their blog without using the embed feature. And I think that embed is an amazing way to kind of connect the dots from a blog post to your Instagram account, which I think too many people kind of forget about.
That's a really great tip. I think I have failed at that a few times. So.
I also spend a lot of time trying to find people to follow, like starting with, because I'm still new at it, starting with people that I already know from other networks. I'm seeking them out to follow them and see what they're doing, and that's really the extent of my efforts to increase things there. But that's highly effective, especially when it's connections that you already have on other channels.
Or, something as simple, and this is the same thing for Twitter for me. Twitter lists are often how I find, I go and look, hey, I love who this person's tweeting. I'm going to go look at their Twitter list and see who they put on lists. Well, guess what? If you have people that you love their comments on you love their posts, see who's commenting on their posts. Not even just who they're following, because sometimes they follow, 4,000 people. See who's actively engaged, because there's nothing more powerful than finding other active social people on your social platform to follow. So for me, it's like, hey, I love, let's say, I can go multiple different ones, but like Simon Sinek one is an interesting one, right? Like I like people that are passionate about their why, right? But I don't want to follow everybody that follows Simon Sinek. But if someone's commented on the last 3 Simon Sinek posts, guess what? I might follow them because they might have something good to share as well. I think that's a good way of doing it. I think that some people overlook. Also, look at your followers. I was working with a brand yesterday on Instagram. It's a friend of the family. They have a working man store in Winchester, Virginia. I went and looked. They have 277 followers. And I know Subi and the team will get a kick out of this. 277 followers. Nike, Under Armour, and Macy's are following that brand. And each one of them, those brands, have over 100,000 followers themselves and are following less than 300 people. And I went, oh my God, you have 3 ginormous brands following your small working man store in Winchester. We need to capitalize on that. Like, that is ginormous. But if you're not looking at who's following you from that perspective, they had no idea. They're like, well, I didn't realize that Macy following us was a big deal. I assumed they followed everyone. They have 300,000 followers. I'm like, no, they have 300,000 followers. They're only following 300. And you're one of those 300, and you're a mom and pop shop that's doing awesome stuff in Winchester. Like, I think that is another best tip. And that happened to me yesterday, sitting at the lake, talking to a friend of the family that, a cousin of mine that was like, I was like, wow, we need to jump on that and see why and how Macy's is following you and how we can get in that conversation.
Social listening
that's
101.
A crazy real life.
It's not who you're following, it's who's following you.
Boom. Love it. All right, I see here, pro tip, giving credit where it's due and social courtesy. I agree, David. That's definitely true. I wish more people would tag the actual photo, not just a comment. It's such a valuable feature. That's an interesting one. What are your thoughts on that? I end up tagging someone. So this is my thought process. If it's in the first 140 characters, I'm going to use their Twitter handle so that when it's pushed to Twitter, they get tagged on Twitter. If it's after the first 140 characters, I don't care about tagging their Twitter handle in the comments because I'm going to tag them in the photo itself. So that's my philosophy on it. I'm not saying there's anything right to that. That's just what goes through this crazy brain when I'm trying to do a strategy. What are your thoughts, Rachel, on tagging someone in the comments as well as a picture, or one or the other?
I think for me, it depends on how many people I'm tagging and what's the purpose. Like if I'm calling out someone specific, I might tag and put their handle in the comment, especially if there's a call to action like follow this person or whatever kind of comment it is. If there's multiple people, if you're tagging 5 or 6 people, then I'll just tag them and I probably won't mention anyone specifically on the image.
Yeah, same here. It's about context again. I mean, a lot of people don't pay attention to who's tagged in the photo. So you tag someone in the photo to get their attention, but if you want someone else to see it, that's when you might want to call it out in the comments. That's what I think.
Yeah, and Gus Wagner said up on Twitter, been having a blast with the new search features on Instagram, discover great new followers and content to appreciate. I can tell you, Instagram has become very much a time suck for that reason, because it is awesome with that new search feature. Like I use something like Periscope, right? Periscope, of course, I'm addicted to the app right now, but if I put that hashtag in, I'm finding new Periscope followers based on the Periscope hashtag used on Instagram because Periscope's discovery feature sucks. Like, I mean, how interesting is that? I'm going to a picture-only platform, or, you know, very little video platform, to find live streaming followers, because you know what? If you're great at upcycling and repurposing your content on Instagram, you're probably someone I want to follow on Periscope. You know, and that's how I use the bridge. So I agree with you, Gus. The search feature on Instagram, if you haven't been on Instagram recently and you're shaking your head and you've been watching this for an hour, first of all, thank you for watching for an hour and not being an Instagram user. Second of all, you might want to get back on there, because that recent update, I told Sue, it blew my mind from a hashtag and a social listening perspective. So I love this topic. I think we just ran out of time. Instagram is the topic for the month. We are going to try to put together a little panel for the last one of the month with some of some power user Instagrammers. I have a couple asks out there to a couple people that have said yes, that are going to jump on and share what their strategies are, which I think will be really interesting. But I thought this was a lot of fun, guys. I think Instagram is a tool that we're dedicating a whole month to, and I think we're all learning together, and isn't that what we're all about?
Yes, sir.
All right, so go ahead, Rachel. Send us off.
So thank you, everyone, for listening. There has been a lot of great tips, especially tool suggestions in the stream today, so be sure to keep an eye on SBizHour hashtag for the remainder of the month. We'll be sharing articles, tips, and definitely closing with a huge panel in a couple weeks. So have a rockin' week. We'll see you next week.